to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're really getting into an intense topic. We're looking at high stakes, high stress careers.
We are. And the source material for this is really fascinating. It was actually put together for emergency medicine physicians.
Exactly. But the lessons here, I mean, they're about building true longevity, finding deep meaning, and just resilience. It applies to pretty much anyone in a tough field.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because when you're under that kind of constant pressure, it's just not enough to survive the next bad day, is it?
No.
Our mission here is to get past the surface level advice and really dig into what it takes to thrive. We're going to look at two big pillars.
Okay.
First, the individual factors, the things you can actually control. We're calling that the self.
Right.
And then the huge, often toxic organizational problems that need real structural change. That's the system.
And you need to master both to really flourish.
You do.
So before we get into all the tactics, we have to start with something a bit surprising about our own minds. We need to talk about the anatomy of happiness. Because understanding where your basic mood comes from, that's really the first step to having any control over it.
And the research on this is pretty humbling, actually. It breaks down your overall happiness into three main parts.
Okay.
50%. A full half of it is just determined by your genetics.
The mood you were basically born with.
Exactly. Then you have about 10% that comes from your external circumstances, how much money you have, your health, that kind of thing.
So wait, 60% is more or less out of your hands?
Largely, yes. But that leaves this massive critical piece left over.
A full 40%.
A full 40% of your happiness is completely under your voluntary control.
And that's not passive. That 40% is all about how intentionally you engage in a meaningful life.
And this is the core idea the sources just keep coming back to. The true opposite of depression isn't happiness, it's resilience.
That's a powerful distinction.
It is. If you're actively going after engagement, meaning connection, you are consciously building your resilience. It's not some trait you either have or you don't.
It's a skill.
It's a skill you can learn and practice and get better at.
That 40% number, I mean, that's the fuel for this whole conversation. If we can target that, we can change everything about how we experience our work.
And to tap into that 40% right away, we can turn to philosophy, specifically Stoicism.
And this isn't about being an emotionless robot, right?
Not at all. It's a really practical, profound framework designed for people operating under extreme stress.
The core idea is that famous one. You have to make a radical distinction.
Every single day. You have to draw a line between what is actually in your control.
Your thoughts, your actions, your emotions, how you prepare for something.
And what is absolutely not.
External events, bureaucratic nonsense, how a patient or a client is feeling.
All of it. And focusing on that is really about conserving your energy. You stop wasting it on things you can't change.
So the first strategy is to maintain agency.
Yes. Taking ownership of your response, even when the world around you is just chaos, that prevents you from sliding into what they call learned helplessness.
But what about when something cruelly catastrophic happens? A terrible mistake or a heartbreaking loss that was unavoidable? It's easy to say, focus on your response, but doesn't that risk just telling people to suppress their feelings?
That's a really critical point. And the sources are clear. Agency isn't about suppressing grief or guilt. It's about owning the story you tell yourself after the event. The event is over, but your thinking about it is continuous. So if you tell yourself, I am a failure, that is a choice. Agency is choosing to analyze what happened, focus on what you could control, and then move forward.
There's that Seneca quote, he is most powerful who has power over himself.
That's it, exactly.
I like that distinction. So the second strategy is, it's wonderfully practical. It's this idea that you can't get rid of the worst days.
You can't. The heartbreak shifts, as they're called. They're going to happen.
So the goal isn't to eliminate them, it's to raise your mean.
Yes. Raise the average quality of your day-to-day. Most days are just average. They're mundane. So you look for small, repeatable improvements there.
Like what?
Oh, simple things. Getting good noise-canceling headphones for when you need to focus. Blocking 5 minutes of silence before a big meeting. Making sure you always have a really, really good cup of coffee.
These little voluntary acts, they just reduce the friction of the day.
They smooth out the variation and raise that experiential average.
And the final piece of this is what the sources call changing your own mind.
And this is not passive meditation. It's very active. A kind of mental editing.
You're aggressively analyzing that stream of frustrating thoughts, the regret, the anxiety.
And you're intentionally choosing which ones to keep and which ones to reject. Epictetus taught this. That's where inner calm and outer effectiveness come from.
Hmm.
You take an obstacle, like a rude person or a stupid bureaucratic rule.
And you repurpose it.
You repurpose it into a chance to build mental toughness.
So if that 40% of our happiness is about voluntary engagement, the next step is finding that engagement, finding meaning, or, as the Japanese call it, ikigai.
Ikigai, it's such an elegant concept. It basically means a reason for being.
The reason you wake up in the morning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's defined by the intersection of 4 circles in a Venn diagram.
Yeah.
It's where these 4 things meet.
What you love.
What you're good at.
What the world needs.
And what you can be paid for.
Finding that sweet spot, that ikigai, it seems absolutely essential for career longevity, especially in jobs that just burn people out so fast.
It is. But you've hit on the tension, right? The system often pushes you toward just one of those circles, what you can be paid for.
Right, maximizing volume, which can kill the what you love part.
It absolutely can. The sources argue you have to find your ikigai by cultivating a niche within the system. So maybe it's mentoring junior staff, or teaching, or getting involved in medical humanities like writing or photography.
Things that provide the meaning that the day-to-day grind sometimes can't.
And speaking of creative outlets, the materials really lean into the role of the arts and wellness.
So this isn't just a hobby.
No, it's a processing mechanism. Things like painting or music or even crochet,
Yeah.
they provide a necessary outlet for vulnerability and reflection.
It helps mitigate stress, and this is key, it can reduce moral injury.
It gives you a safe place to process all those complex emotions without judgment.
And you don't need, a huge art studio for this. The sources talk about portable wellness.
Tiny things you can do during your workday, like applying yoga principles.
So just focusing on the breath.
Yes, specifically slow exhalation. When you breathe out longer than you breathe in, you're basically flipping a switch in your nervous system. You're telling it to calm down.
You can do that standing in a hallway between meetings.
And mindful posture. Are you hunched over a computer? Is your lab coat weighing you down? Just consciously straightening up, dropping your shoulders. It's a small physical act of self-care that improves your mental state.
But what about when those little things aren't enough? When you feel like you're really slipping?
That's where the adult APGAR comes in. It's a quick self-assessment tool.
APGAR. So it's an acronym.
Right.
Access to emotions, priorities, growth, assistance, and responsibility.
Right. And access to emotions here means, can you actually pause and name what you're feeling? Or are you just numb?
Priorities is about whether your actions line up with your values.
Growth is whether you're still learning. Assistance is, can you ask for help? And responsibility is, are you handling your personal life?
And the key takeaway is the score.
The key is the score. If you score yourself and you're at a 5 or less out of 10, the sources say you are in significant trouble.
And you need professional help. Immediately.
Yes.
That's a powerful tool. Okay, but that brings up a huge point, doesn't it? All this personal resilience, that whole 40%, it can be totally wiped out by a dysfunctional environment.
It absolutely can, which is why we have to shift our focus to the system.
Because even the most resilient person will burn out if you drop them into a broken structure.
Exactly. And to talk about system stress, we have to get really clear on the difference between 2 things: burnout and moral injury.
We hear about burnout all the time. Emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, feeling ineffective.
Right. But moral injury it's something different. It's much deeper.
It's the distress that happens when you're forced by your job to act against your own moral beliefs.
Yes. When policies make you put profits or compliance or bureaucracy ahead of what's clearly best for the patient or the client.
And that's why the superficial fixes, the yoga classes, the ice cream socials,
They're met with total scorn because they don't touch the real source of the problem, which feels like a betrayal of your entire purpose.
the consequences of this can be just tragic. We have to talk about the extreme risk, about suicide, through what's called the Joiner theory.
The theory says 3 things have to come together. For physicians, the first part is kind of baked into the job. They have the capacity for suicide.
Because their training makes them familiar with lethal means, and it trains them to override the natural fear of death to help patients.
Precisely. That instinct they override to be a great clinician also puts them at risk. So they only need 2 other things to fall into place.
Thwarted belongingness.
A feeling of deep social isolation, being disconnected from your team,
And perceived burdensomeness.
the feeling that you're a failure, a drain on others. which often comes from shame over a bad outcome. So systemic fixes have to be about fighting that isolation.
And the system also has to deal with actual danger. Workplace harassment is illegal, period.
But in places like the ER, violence is often just seen as part of the job.
Which is completely unacceptable.
It has to be a zero-tolerance culture. Harassment and violence thrive when the culture is stagnant. Reporting is difficult, and people fear retaliation. You need safe, streamlined, anonymous ways to report issues.
Okay, so let's flip this. What does a good responsive system do right? Starting with something as basic as scheduling. Sleep has to be priority one.
The evidence is pretty clear on shift rotation. Clockwise rotation is better.
So going from day shift to evening shift to night shift.
Yes. That's easier on your body's circadian rhythm than going the other way.
Yep.
It's a small change with a massive impact on fatigue.
And the power nap isn't a luxury.
It's a professional tool. The data shows a nap of, say, 1.5 to 3 hours can restore about 6 hours of lost function. That's critical for decision-making on a long night shift.
Next, a good system has to support people after something goes wrong. That's where we get second victim syndrome.
The trauma that healthcare workers feel after a medical error or a terrible outcome.
And the old way of dealing with this, the mandatory group debriefing, CISD.
It's actually been found to be unhelpful. Sometimes it even makes things worse.
So what's the gold standard now?
Individualized peer support, emotional first aid. Because shame thrives in secrecy and silence and judgment.
So just talking about it with a peer who gets it, who won't judge you.
That's where healing starts.
Okay, let's pivot to something that causes a ton of stress. Money.
A huge invisible drain on your focus. The advice from the sources here is simple. Simple is smart.
When you're a high-income earner but you have no time, complexity is your enemy.
Absolutely. So use low-cost index funds, or ETFs.
Yeah.
They take almost no maintenance, and they outperform most actively managed funds in the long run. It just frees up so much mental space.
And the sources really push this buckets approach for allocating your assets. Why is that so smart for this group?
It's all about managing risk based on when you'll need the money. Your short-term bucket for taxes, a down payment, that has to be in no-risk savings.
Right.
The medium term can be in bonds, and only the long-term retirement bucket should have the riskier growth stocks. It protects your cash when you know you're going to need it soon.
Which reduces that constant financial anxiety.
And we have to mention asset protection.
Yeah.
Getting an umbrella policy, knowing your state's laws, that helps reduce the stress of being sued.
Finally, let's talk about the administrative beast. The email inbox.
Inbox zero, which is not about having zero emails.
No, it's about having zero email stress.
And the first rule, the non-negotiable one, is you have to turn off the notifications.
That constant pinging just hijacks your attention.
It throws you into reactive mode all day.
Yeah.
Once you do that, you use the 5D system to process what's left.
Which is delete the junk, delegate what isn't yours, respond if it's quick.
Defer the longer stuff to a specific time block. And do it right away if it takes less than 2 minutes.
It's a strategy to defend your own attention.
So, to pull this whole together, professional longevity, it requires this constant duality, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
You build resilience internally. That's your 40% voluntary control, your ikigai, your stoic practice. But that internal work has to be matched by fighting for systems that actually support you. Systems that value competence and meaning and safety.
And it's so easy to look at just the brokenness of modern healthcare or the demands of any high-stakes job and feel completely powerless against it all. But there's that great Stoic lesson from Marcus Aurelius. The impediment to action advances action.
That friction you feel every single day, the clunky EMR, the bureaucracy, the patient overload, it isn't just an obstacle to your work. It is the work, in a way.
So the provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. If you can't change the enormous bureaucratic thorns right now, today,
how can you consciously use that friction to sharpen the very skills, the mental toughness, the empathy, the deep meaning that the world desperately needs you to have? How can you use the difficulty itself to forge your own resilience?